All right, so we're going to hit up our cars routine. We're going to start off with neck. Want to make that circle as big as possible. If you have pain, please stop. We're going to get 3 each way. The goal is to try to lock in that joint above and below. We're going to transition down to spine. So now we're going to lock in that joint above and that joint below. So hug yourself again, crunch it down. Now we're going to move on to our scapula. Scapula are those 2 floating bones in the back of our shoulders there. They're sit on our back like this. And the goal from a visual representation is to make a circle where they're moving around as big as possible. So we're going to move our arms straight out in front, and you'll notice that my hands will stay still as possible, but I'm going to try to move my scapulas around my body. So a big conscious focus on keeping that joint above, meaning your arms, and that joint below, my ribs and my back, as locked in as possible so I can isolate my scapulas in that big 360-degree sphere of motion I'm trying to get. 3 forward, 3 back, make that circle as big as possible. Now we're going to transition to shoulder. We'll do 1 arm at a time here. A lot more things to manage here, considering I'm going to make a big 360-degree sphere. So what we like to say is keep that side from the ribs to the hip locked in. That foot's heavy, that rib's locked in. And then as we start to move our shoulder, we're going to get as much rotation without changing my body's orientation. So lock in, create pressure, pack the air down and in, come up and across. Notice how my arm is staying externally rotated as long as I can. Rotate that arm in as I come back. And when I get to the side here, I'm going to reverse by pushing my thumb back as far as I can without feeling pain and stopping when I need to stop, and then start to slowly unravel, come back out, down the same way I went up. We're going to go 3 on the right. Locking in that same side position so those ribs and those arms and those hips do not move. Just focusing exclusively on that shoulder and getting as much rotation, flexion, extension, abduction, adduction as I possibly can. We'll go on to the other side. Again, start off with the arm there, pack in that rib, come on up, rotate around. 3. Each circle, try to make bigger and bigger. Once we're done with 3 here, we're going to move on to elbow. On elbow, we're going to lock in our elbow position, so we'll rotate our arms outwards. Now that joint above is now my shoulder, and my joint below is my wrist. So I want to lock those 2 in. I'm going to flex at the elbow, rotate my arm in, come on back down. The other way you can explain this is a supinated position into a pronated position. 3, and then we're going to move on to wrist. Now on the wrist, that joint above is this forearm, so I want to avoid pronating and supinating. I want to stay in this fixed position, and that joint below are my fingers. So I want to lock in my fingers and lock in that forearm. If I'm struggling, if I'm going here and I'm moving my arms, we can simply lock it in and create a block here. If I'm struggling to maintain my finger position, I can just make a closed fist. But as a whole, we want to start off here. Forearms are pointed in the same direction as we start. Come on in, Make the circle as big as you can coming around. And then we're going to rotate facing the other way. If you're struggling again to keep that forearm fixed, just grab that wrist. If you're struggling again to control your fingers, make a closed fist. Goal is to make that circle as big as possible without making any changes at the forearm or the fingers. 3, and then we're going to move on to hip. So hip, we treat the same way as our shoulder, lock in that same rib position. For balance, grab on something to solid. I'm just going to do this directly in front of you. So we're going to bring this knee up. I'm thinking lock in that rib position, lock in my torso position, bring that knee up as high as you can, rotate, pull that knee out. As I'm pulling it out, my sternum, my belly button are pointed straight ahead. Rotate while keeping that knee up. Push that knee back, a little bit of extension, and then we're going to come on back, drive up and around into the start. We're going to go 3 each way here. Remember, keeping this torso in this fixed position, so I'm not rotating, I'm not leaning, I'm not bending. I'm just trying to stay as locked in. It's like a statue up here. So other leg is locked in. Make that circle and that sphere as big as you possibly can. Imagine I have a dot that's going over my knee. I'm trying to make that dot, make it as big as possible circle as I can. We'll go on to the other side here. If you're struggling to maintain position, even holding on, create tension on the opposite side. So if I want to create something here, I'm holding on here, create tension, lock it in. It's just about giving feedback to get that right joint moving at the right time and the right sequence. We're going to go 3 each way here. Make that circle bigger and bigger every time. Create tension, create stability. Lock in that joint above by not leaning and not collapsing. Control your body while you move a joint through space. Last 2, we're going to make our way to the ground. So we're going to find something stable, seat here. We're going to hug the back of our leg. So if you can, create as much of a lock or anchor point on that joint above, or that bone above being our upper leg. And we're going to try to fix that so I can get as much rotation at this knee with the shin rotating out. So we're going to start off with the shin rotating out. We're going to extend up, rotate that shin in, come on down, keeping that leg pointed in, come on up, extend, come on down. And we're going to repeat that process 2 more times for a total of 3 reps. We're actually going to stay on the same leg. And we're going to lower our guard. So we're going to simply lower that guard down to our shin now. So I'm locking in that joint above. And this looks similar to what we're doing on the wrist. It's exactly what it is. We're going to treat the wrist the same way as our ankle. It's just hard to govern our ankle without giving some feedback here. So we're going to go 1 ankle at a time. We're just going to make that circle as big as possible. Now fortunately, you can't really see my toes, so that joint below is a little easier to manage on our feet than it is our hands, because we have more dexterity there. But we still want to be cognizant of where my toes are going as I'm making this circle around that ankle. 3 each way there, and we're going to transition to the other side. So we'll go the lock here, brace it up. We'll go 3, and then we'll lower ourselves down to our shin, and we'll finish off on that final ankle. That's it. For today's program, we need 2 items, a towel and a lacrosse ball. The lacrosse ball is optional, but towel we're definitely going to need. If you don't have a towel, which would be shocking, but if you don't, we just need something to pull against to create an isometric pull. And we'll go over that when we get to that in the later half of the workout. We're going to open up with some pails and rails, looking at hip extension. So we're going to get into a quadruped position, meaning we're going to be on all 4s. We actually wanted to create more extension. So when I'm set up here, we're going to collapse onto the ground, and then we're really going to try to get as much, and actually start with this side so you guys can see it. So we're going to collapse into that, and then we're actually creating a little bit more extension requirement. But if I was here, I have a lot more available range. So what I want to do is just get into this stretch position, and we're just going to hold right here. And this is going to bring a lot more in terms of extension I need to get in that position. So we're holding this position, focusing on our breath, in through the nose, out through the mouth, trying to expand that whole area between my ribs and my pelvis. We're going to hold this for about 2 minutes. From there, I'm going to explain what we're going to go into next. So just try to focus while I'm going through the next sequence in terms of your breathing. Just trying to sit deep into that stretch. If you feel a little pain in this knee or that hip, just pull out a little bit. But we still want to get enough where we're actually getting a hard contraction to come off the ground. So on our pails, meaning that we're going to drive our foot into the ground, we're focusing on the back leg. So this leg that's long is the leg that we're actually going to try to get extension on. I'm going to take a deep breath in, pack that air, and then I'm going to take that foot and then drive it into the ground. So I'm thinking that back toe is going into the ground. I'm going to ramp up that intensity, trying to make a hole in the earth. We're going to hold that for 10 seconds, and then what we're actually going to do is reverse it in the opposite direction into our rails. So pails down to the ground, rails away from the ground, hold as hard as we can, as high as we can, without changing our body position. This collapsed position actually holds that body in a little bit more of a locked in position because I'm locking in this joint, I'm locking in this joint, so rotation's gonna be hard. So you really gotta dig your hands into the ground and lift and hold, all right? So make sure we're situated, make sure we have a good position to push into the ground and pull away from the ground. What we're gonna do from here is we're gonna take a deep breath in, pack that air, and then we're going to start driving that back toe into the ground, 20% of your max voluntary contraction. We're going to ramp up here to 40%, 60%, 80, 100. Your safest, greatest effort for 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, reverse, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and parachute down. See if you can collapse a little bit more. If you want to flatten out that toe, you can get a little bit more into that hip position, and then it's going to be a little bit harder to create separation from the ground. We're going to hold this for a minute again. And then we're just going to focus on our breathing. We have a little bit more range here. Just get a little bit more comfortable here. You'll notice on hip extension, you probably don't have as much as hip flexion. And this is why this collapsed position is really important. On a good day, probably most people have between 5 and 15 degrees, which is not much at all. So if you feel like you can't move that much, that's exactly what the point is. And get in this position so we only get extension of that hip, as opposed to I get there and I'm like completely rotating or leaning or contorting my body to get that foot elevated is the exact opposite of what we want. So think we don't have a lot of range here, so range of motion is not that much, and that position hopefully help us in that and keep us honest in that position so we get true hip extension. Okay, so we're going to get set up here for another pails and rails. We're going to take a deep breath in, hold that, pack that air down, create tension, ramp up, hold for 10, and then we're going to lift off and hold for 10 there. All right, deep breath in, pack that air. 20%, 40, 60, 80, 100, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, reverse, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, parachute down. So we're going to pull ourselves out of here a little bit. So depending on how much separation you have, we want to get into a position, and the higher I am in my torso, the more lift I'm going to have. The lower I am, the less lift, because what we're doing is taking our body and putting it in a more extended position. So we want to create something in a position-wise, and you pick it based off on your hands or on your elbows, where you feel like you can get enough of a lift off that leg where you're getting, quote-unquote, something out of it. So find that position, whether it's down here, And it might be just 1 inch off the ground, or it's up here where it's 3 inches off the ground, where you feel like, hey, okay, now I'm getting a position where I can feel what I'm trying to do. And what we're trying to do is create hip extension. And on hip extension, you feel, quote unquote, that tissue or that glute getting really contracted. And you just find whatever it is today that will make that successful. As we go through these 2 weeks, next week, just try to find a position where I'm a little bit more and they have a little bit more extension requirement. Okay, so let's get situated down here. We're going to find a really good position. We're going to go 10 lift-offs here with a 3-count hold off the ground. So I'll pack the air in, lift, 3, 2, 1, and then we're going to parachute down. Just be very, very careful that we're not slamming that toe into the ground, specifically if we're on a hard surface. Okay, so let's take a deep breath in, pack the air, lift, 3, 2, 1, parachute down. Pack the air, lift, 3, 2, 2, parachute down. Pack the air, lift, 3, 2, 3. Pack the air, lift, 3, 2, 4. Pack the air, lift, 3, 2, 5. Pack the air, lift, 3, 2, 6. Pack the air, lift, 3, 2, 7. Pack the air, lift, 3, 2, 8. Pack the air, lift, 3, 2, 9. One more. Pack the air, lift, 3, 2, and 10. Awesome. Transition out of that nice and slowly. So if you have your lacrosse ball, I'm going to change direction just so you can see the side more effectively. We want to take that lacrosse ball and trap it between my calf and my knee. And what this is going to do is keep this relationship honest as I start to go through a hip axial. Hip axial, very similar to a hip car. We're just really trying to target it in a different level. So on a hip capsular car, we don't want the effect of gravity to be that much, right? When we're looking at an axial, we want to create more abduction or flexion, meaning I'm going to pull that leg away from the ground and try to increase the rotational capacity at that level. So we're setting up here, we're going to raise our body, so we'll go hands and knees here. We're going to bring this knee up, and then we're just going to try to slowly rotate back and forth. We're going to go 5, and then we're going to parachute down. With that lacrosse ball, we're creating a block, so I'm not getting false range from anywhere else except for that femur or that upper leg going in and out. When you're done with 5, we'll parachute down, and then we'll actually transition to the opposite side where I'll just break down here and we'll get set up for pails and rails on the opposite leg I did. So we'll set up down again. We're going to get into a collapsed position. I'm going to line up that back leg, and I'm just going to, from here, focus on my breathing. Every breath in, just try to get a little bit more comfortable in that position. You know what's essentially coming here, so we're going to be on this knee for a while. So if you're on a hard surface and you want to grab a towel to put on your knee or something, please do so. The goal is just to get comfortable here and just try to get as much of a stretch position. Remember, we're trying to build in hip extension, so the more lower I can bring my body, or the lower I can bring my body, the better the stretch on that hip extension, and I can create more separation from the ground, and I get more of an impact in terms of the relative extension pattern that I'm trying to get. So we've been holding for about a minute. Each one, try to get a better breath in. You'll notice again that you'll have different extension from one side to the other. Just goes back into that reason why we train mobility the way we do, why we train the way we do in general, is that we're naturally asymmetrical, and we need to have mechanisms to train to bring natural levels of symmetry to our body. We're always going to be asymmetrical to a degree, but if I can do things like, okay, now I'm isolating my right side, acknowledging that maybe I'm not as much hip extension, I can get more out of that, as opposed to doing it bilaterally and just saying, okay, well, I don't have it on that side, so I can just make up for it and compensate it on the other. Long story short is train unilaterally, train consistently, train really hard. All right, so we'll get set up here for pails and rails. Remember, pails is down into the ground, rails is away from the ground. We're going to ramp up, hold for 10, and then we're going to lift away and hold that for 10. So let's take a deep breath in. Let's pack that air. Let's create tension through our body. We're going to apply about 20% pressure down to the ground. 40%, 60%, 80, 100, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Reverse. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Parachute down. Nice job. Remember, if we want to get a little bit more of a stretch, we can collapse down a little bit so we can take that toe up off the ground, flatten out that foot, get a little bit more there, and then we're going to have a little bit more of an extended position of that hip. So when we're here in this position, try to relax into your breathing. If you feel any pain here or here, just slowly pull yourself out and find a position when we don't. We're going to get one more round of pails and rails, and then we'll transition into our passive range lifts off, and then we'll get our hip axials on this side. You know, one interesting point, and I'll make this last point before we get into this pails and rails, is when we do our hinge patterns, like single leg RDL or dumbbell RDL or barbell RDL or kettlebell swing, it's that premature low back extension that becomes a problem, right? So if I start to extend at the low back before I extend my hips, we start seeing pain emerge, right? And you see this of like this lifting of your head, lifting of your upper back, arching big time to get upright, right? And that where it becomes a big fundamental problem and why we teach the way we teach a swing of come up before we fully extend. But if we have complete and full hip extension, we really won't need to get that excessive level of extension coming on with that lower back or that lumbar. And we can protect that spine a little bit more from these movements that are great on paper, but when we start moving in the wrong biomechanics, we could limit the potential of them. They can actually become unnecessarily risky. Where if we can create mobility or hip extension before we get there, we might have the capacity to get to that full extended position without having to compromise the joints above and below. And that's kind of the beauty behind all this, is we're training mobility to get back to a point when we do get back to these movements that we can use in the weight room, we can get more out of them. And hopefully that leads into a greater overall effect in the period of time and making the most of the situation. Okay, and rant. Let's get set up here for another pails and rails. So we're going to take a deep breath in. We're going to drive that foot into the ground, working up to 100%, hold that for 10, and then reverse it. Try like hell to fight in both directions as hard as you can in your safest, greatest effort. Let's take a deep breath in, pack that air down and in, 20% down. 40%, 60%, 80, 100, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, reverse. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, parachute down. Nice job. Let's get a couple breaths in that position. I'm going to explain where we're going to go next. If you really struggled with hip extension on this side relative to the other side and you want to go a little higher, completely up to you. Remember, we're trying to get something where we get the feeling of what we're trying to do and then progress it. If you want to stay low, just pull yourselves out of there and go back to the toe into the ground position. Also fine. We're going to get 10 lift-offs here. Remember, we're going to pack the air, lift, hold, 3 count, and then we parachute down. So we'll get set up here. If you need to adjust your knee or pause and shake it out, please do so. We're going to hit 10 reps with a 3 count hold at the top. All right, deep breath in, pack the air, lift, 3, 2, 1, parachute down. Pack the air, lift, 3, 2, 2, parachute down. Pack the air, lift, 3, 2, 3, parachute down. Pack the air, lift, 3, 2, 4. Pack the air, lift, 3, 2, 5. Pack the air, lift, 3, 2, 6. Pack the air, lift, 3, 2, 7. Pack the air, lift, 3, 2, 8. Pack the air, lift, 3, 2, 9. One more. Pack the air, lift, 3, 2, 10. Awesome job. Slowly transition out of that. Grab your tennis ball or lacrosse ball if you have it. We're going to trap that between that same side we just worked. We're going to work some hip axials, so between our calf and our hamstring. We're going to take a deep breath in. We're going to pull that knee up and out as high as we can, and then we're going to rotate in as up as we can, and then out as much as we can. 5 each direction. And you'll notice in this position you feel a pretty robust contraction going on in that glute. And what that happens is because we're at end range, and we're taking that tissue and shortening it just a little bit more, which is a huge stimulus for that muscle group. And this is a different type of tension, right? Where we become reliant in the weight room on mechanical loading. Like, I'm just going to load you up with heavy implement as possible. Maybe I leverage tempo, maybe I leverage position or implement. But that departure from that, we can still create incredible levels of tension without actually tools. And hopefully we get that across by this period of just grabbing whatever it is, like your body weight, and moving it through space and creating your own tension. There's a cap in terms of how much we can actually get out of that, but there's still incredible value from doing so. Okay, so we're good here. If you need to take a quick drink or get a break at all, please do so. We're going to transition to the more strength stuff. Let me just recap this.
And I couldn't quite tell, but this is your cam if you're talking to it.
Oh, yeah.
Not that one.
All right, so in this series, we're going to go dead bugs and bird dogs. And then we got 3 sets of 6 crawl hold single leg extension with a 4 count, 20-second isometric pull, and then scat push-ups 12. Okay. All right, you ready?
So yeah, are we starting back to the ground?
Yeah, and then it's going to go into, so I'll go 2 rounds of bird dogs and dead bugs.
Yeah, so let's go, okay. Yeah.
Right here. Do you want me horizontal or?
This way.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. All right, so we're going to move into our pillar work before we get set up into our actual strength work for today. Okay, so on the pillar work, we're going to go 2 rounds of 10 each side, dead bug and bird dog. Remember, on that dead bug and bird dog is we're moving our arms while controlling our thorax and our pelvis, meaning that ribs stay in the same spot and that pelvis stays in the same spot, and that area in between obviously will stay in the same spot. So we want to figure out, how do I create a robust amount of tension and compression here so I can move my arms and legs freely without having any movements or amendments here. So we'll set up on the ground, low back glute to the ground. This will be our dead bug. We're going to press our arms up, toes pull to the shin, knees pull to the shin, right arm, left leg, all the way out, as far as away you can get. Left arm, right leg. That's 1. We're going to go 10 each side. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now we're going to do the same thing reversed on all 4s. So we're going to line up here, hands and knees, right arm, left leg. Reach it out as far as possible away from each other without changing your rib position or your pelvis position. All right, here we go. Right arm, left leg. 1. Left arm, right leg. 2. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All right, we got one more round of dead bug. On that dead bug, you notice my hands are in a closed fist and my toes are pulled to the shins. That's a really big step because we want to look at, I want to reach out as far as possible from that foot to the hand, but if my hands are loose and my toes are loose or my foot is loose, what we typically see is a lot of change in that low back position. So just simply create more compression or tension by squeezing your fist and then pulling your toe to your shin, and that creates a lot more stability. If you got it, you got it. If you're not changing, you want to go loose with your hands and loose with your feet, great. But if not, you want to make sure you're pulling in a strategy to help create tension and stability in that midsection. So we'll go back to dead bug. Think that in your mind. If I need to have more compression here, I kind of close my fist and pull my toes. If you're good, just make sure you get 10 really quality reps separating your hand and your foot as much as possible. All right, so let's get set up. Trap that back against the ground, head, shoulders, hips on the ground. Place your hands up. We're going to go right arm and left leg again, separating as much as possible. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Nice. Awesome. We're going to go on to our bird dog. Now, we hear this a lot, we see this a lot. There's a lot of bird dogs where we actually get a huge amount of hip extension. Really cool timing, right? We just worked hip extension in pails and rails, and we went through that there's probably not a lot of degrees of hip extension, more so than 5 to 10, or even upwards to 15 if you're really mobile. So if I want to get this foot up that high, I'm going to have to rotate, and where's that rotation going to occur? At that low back. So thinking, if I have about 5, maybe even 10 degrees of extension, instead of pushing up and back and putting a lot of compressive or rotational forces at that back, I want to push my heel back and create hip extension, but not surpassing that and creating the joints above to kind of compromise. And I think this is the great issue when we look at core, because we need a certain amount of volume because there's not a lot of load, but we also need to understand that there's a biomechanical trade-off for range of motion, and we don't want that trade-off from the wrong joints. But we still need to get a lot more volume to get that feel, but also to the actual transference to what we want in terms of better control and actually having more area of fatigue, like anti-resistance to like fatigue and rotation and all these things. But we also need to keep in consideration of like the degrees of freedom that those joints have a compromise if I try to push past that. So if you see that like, oh man, like that's coming from the low back. And if you have low back pain, focus on pushing your hands and heel away as far as apart and realize the limitations of hip extension, just everyone, and then try to get as much out of that exercise as you possibly can. All right, so we're going to go bird dog again. We got 10 each side. We know how much hip extension we have because we just did it. We're going to go 10, and then we'll go ahead and get transferred to our strength exercises. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Psyched you out. I did every side there. 11, 12. It's 10 each. 13. Got to stay on your toes. 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Hell yeah. All right. If you need a drink, please get one. If you want to shake it out, please get one. All right, so now we're going to need our towel that we told you to get before. We're going to do 3 exercises. We're going to go crawl hold, single leg extension with a 4-count hold for 6 each side. I'll show you that here in a second. We're going to go a towel, bent over isometric pull, so it looks like an RDL, but like pulling against a fixed resistance. And then we're going to go into a scap push-up, just trying to bring our shoulder blades together and pull them apart. So really big emphasis on posterior chain, really big emphasis on the shoulder stabilizers of that scapula, pulling back, and trying to get as much of a training effect. One of the big feedbacks we got was, can we get more body weight exercises in there and like progressive way from a lot of the mobility? And I think it's great feedback, and we're doing our best we can to maintain this aspect of structural balance balance, and good training principles. And this is kind of that progression into it. All right, so first one, we're going to go crawl, hold, single leg extension, 6 with a 4 count out. So crawl, hands and toes. So I'm completely off my knees. I'm going to push that heel back, and I'm going to hold that in that position. Remember, we don't have a lot of degrees of extension, so make sure we're pushing that heel back. We're going to get 6 each side with a 4 count hold. All right, here we go. Let's get set up in. Crawl, hold, chin tuck, push that heel back. 4, 3, 2, 1. 4, 3, 2, 2. 4, 3, 2, 3. 4, 3, 2, 4, 4, 3, 2, 5, 4, 3, 2, 6. Let's switch sides. 4, 3, 2, 1. 4, 3, 2, 2. 4, 3, 2, 3. 4, 3, 2, 4. 4, 3, 2, 5, 4, 3, 2, 6. Nice job. All right, let's grab our towel. So we want to fold it up so as we're in a small of a sphere as possible. So get it folded up on each side. Just make sure it's uniform on each side. And we're just simply going to stack it on the ground, and we're going to step over the towel like such. Now from here, I want to grab each side, and I'm pulling as hard as I can off the ground with a good hinge mechanic. And we're looking from the side. We're going to set up from the bottom up. So good flat back, chin tucked, pull, and then hold that position. We're going to go a 20-second hold here, maximally pulling within reason of how much you can pull against that towel. Try to rip that towel off the floor. So step on. Step up, good hard 20-second isometric hold, and up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Great work. Place the towel on the ground. One more exercise in the series. It will be a scap push-up. So good push-up position, keeping your ribs and your pelvis neutral. We're going to squeeze our shoulder blades and spread them apart. Now, in this position, I'm going to do a side angle. You'll notice when we see a lot of people do this, instead of bringing their shoulder blades together, they drop their body. So again, hard rule. Keep this and the relationship between the two as uniform as possible. So we'll get lined up here in a push-up position, strong from head to toe. We're going to squeeze our shoulder blades in, spread them apart, 12 reps. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Awesome job. So that's set 1. We're going to go 2 more rounds. If you need to get yourself a quick drink, please do so now. Just hit pause. All right, here we go. Let's get ready here for some round 2. We know now what the expectation is. Let's build off of that. Let's try to make progression biomechanically, so how well we move and how well we control each other, but also contraction-wise. You know there's an end, so if we're doing 6 and it got really hard, push through as hard as you can because you know it's going to end. So push that leg back farther, create more tension in your body, really squeeze that 4 count down. Try not to get that premature putting the foot down before it goes ahead and gets to the end of that 4 count. All right, 6 each side, crawl hold. So let's get lined up, hands and toes. Knees 1 inch up off the ground, chin tuck, push that leg back, your second favorite leg. 4, 3, 2, 1. 4, 3, 2, 2, 4, 3, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 4, 4, 3, 2, 5, 4, 3, 2, 6. Other leg. 4, 3, 2, 1. 4, 3, 2, 2. 4, 3, 2, 3. 4, 3, 2, 4. 4, 3, 2, 5. 4, 3, 2, 6. Awesome work. Slowly lower yourself down. We're going to grab onto our towel. I'm going to do a little quarter turn here so you can see a different angle. So we'll step up on the towel. Just make sure your feet are even. Once you get set up, get a good grip on your towel, get in a good back position, and then when you're ready, we're going to pull as hard as we can up off the ground. All right, here we go. And up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20. Relax. Great work, guys. We're going to go into our scap push-up. Think about this like a plank. Control, control, control. Have this nice and stable so when I'm moving through my shoulder blades, I'm not worried about this area anymore. The more we can control this, typically the safer and healthier our back will be. All right, so let's get lined up in a good push-up position. Toes, hands, set that torso position, squeeze your shoulder blades, spread them apart. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 1, 2. Awesome work. 2 rounds done. Guys are killing it. Stay with it. Don't give up. Keep pushing hard. If you need a quick drink, please do so now. All right, so we're going to our third round here. What we want to figure out now is as I get tired, as I get fatigued, how can I leverage strategies of the joint position to get a little bit more control and a little bit more stability? And we go through this all the time. You guys probably just don't realize it, but what a great opportunity to go through the biomechanical rationales of why we set up what we do. We talk about packed neck, tucking that chin. What that does is it closes off that angle and creates a compression of this cervical spine. And that's good for a swing or an RDL or even a squat, because if I have a lot of motion going on in joints all around while I'm moving, then I'm going to have a hard time controlling the other joints below. And we always talk about what is the most tangible and malleable thing to adjust? Hands and feet are usually the 2 lowest hanging fruit, right? So if I say, hey, dig your feet into the ground and grab that bar harder, immediately you get a visceral reaction and you change that technique. And the same thing with head. Typically, we have a lot of control over hands, feet, and head. So if I say tuck that chin and pack that neck, now I have a lot better opportunity to change the other things, right? Can I get that hip? Can I get that knee? Can I get that ankle? Can I get that shoulder? Moving the way I want, when I want, where I want, has pretty much a targeted effect to get whatever is the impact from that exercise. So we're thinking hands, feet, head, but we're also thinking about, can I rotate and dial in that shoulder? We'll talk about single arm swings. We'll talk about different pressing or pulling, rotating in. And what that does is it creates this locked-in mechanism of that shoulder. So we're in this crawl position. I'm starting to get fatigued. Do those elbows start creeping forward? You're now creating more mechanical load on the tissues here. Lock it in. Let that shoulder capsule sit in, and let that actual structure of that shoulder stabilize you. And that's just a nice tool when you're doing push-ups. If you start giving out and you start really struggling there, use that corkscrew. When we're looking at swings, use that corkscrew. Same thing with your hip. As I'm looking at that hip position, can I lock it in by creating internal pressure to create more stability so I can move the joints that I want freely without any kind of restrictions? And all this interplay here is thinking about there's a motor learning component to it, but then there's also a structural component to it. And can I adjust the right things at the right time to get you targeting that area exactly how we want, when you want, so at the end we're safer and healthier and we get better performance in the process of doing so. All right, so we got one more round. Big cues here, pack that neck, rotate those elbows back, dig that toe into the ground, and push as hard as you can into that single leg extension in the crawl position. Okay, let's get set up here. Hands and toes, rotate those elbows back, tuck the chin, push back. 4, 3, 2, 1. 4, 3, 2, 2. 4, 3, 2, 3. 4, 3, 2, 4. 4, 3, 2, 5. 4, 3, 2, 6. Switch sides. 4, 3, 2, 1. 4, 3, 2, 2. 4, 3, 2, 3. 4, 3, 2, 4. 4, 3, 2, 5. 4, 3, 2, 6. Hell yeah. Hopefully those cues and tips helped. Let's get set up here for our towel RDL hold, isometric hold. Now, little foreshadowing I did there. Same rules apply here. So we're loading up that shoulder by rotating our elbows back. We're loading up our hip by imaginarily trying to rotate our legs out on the towel. So we're not physically going to rotate our toes out, but we're just thinking I'm isometrically trying to pull out on that pelvis as I go down into the RDL so I can create tension and stability in my hips and my shoulders. And that process too, thinking about this isometrically is a lot better and easier to manage than when I'm moving it dynamically, but having that framework to know how to do it when you're static should have some sort of ability to cross over and transfer into an actual dynamic movement, okay? So we'll grab the towel, set up on there, tuck your chin, rotate your elbows back, imaginarily try to rotate your femurs out or your upper legs, and pull. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, pack that chin, 11, 12, rotate the elbows, 13, 14, keep the femurs locked in, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20. Great work, guys. Great work. I think I'm challenging Nate or Walter and even Wagyu for the sweatiest coach right now. Okay, last exercise. We're going to go into our scap push-up. Now we've increased the lever arm, right? So we're now taking that bent knee and extended it out. So those rules are applying pressure in those hips and those shoulders while I move my scapula and maintaining there. It's equally as important. It never takes a set off. It never takes a rep off. It never takes an exercise off. All right, so it's set up on the ground. Lock in that hand position. Tuck that chin. Rotate our elbows back. Pick your knees up. Try to create pressure in your pelvis. Contract, and let's squeeze our shoulder blades. Spread them apart. 1, 2, 3. Lock that head position. 4. Lock that shoulder position. 5, lock that torso position. 6, lock that leg position. 7, lock everything in. 8, 9, get as close as you can with your shoulder blades and as far apart as you can. 10, 11, 12. Hell yeah. Great work, guys. So we're going to finish off with some Eldoa. We got our 3 big stretches, which we're going to go through here right now. L5, S1, T8, T9, and T6, T7. Now, here's the logistics of this all. You know, a lot of us don't have a lot of available wall space, specifically close to the ground. So hopefully we can give some strategies where we can go over some different things to hold those stretch positions while still getting the same effect. So if you have a wall, obviously put your legs up on the wall. That's our easiest, most tangible way to do L5, S1. If we don't, we're going to grab a chair or a bench. We're just going to put our legs up on the bench like such. Now, when our legs are long, the rule is dorsiflex, rotate in. When our knees are bent, now we're actively pushing our toes forward. And we call this position that knee bend position because we're trying to create an anchor or a fixed point. And you'll notice automatically that's going to rotate your femurs in. From here, L5S1 is all about creating distraction. So I'm going to press up, and then in this position, I'm pulling my fingers back and then pushing my palms away. So while I'm in this position, I'm pushing my toes forward and I'm pushing my hands away to create as much separation essentially from my toe and my palms as I possibly can. In this position, focus on your diaphragmatic breathing. We're going to hold this stretch for 60 seconds. If you don't have a stopwatch or a watch at all, or you just don't know how to count for whatever reason, it's nice. It's actually easy to count your breaths. Each breath takes roughly about 4 to 5 seconds. So if you get roughly, what's the math there? 10 of them? Yeah, about 50 seconds. You're probably in a good spot right there. So we'll go 10 deep breaths in that position, slowly unwind, and then transition out. So the second one we can just do right here on the ground. Remember again, with our knees bent, we're rotating our toes down into the ground. So this is T8, T9. So pull your heels in, rotate your big toes down into the ground. We're going to pull our torso forward. Now, if this is what I got while I can hold this position, this right here is better than that. And what I mean by that is we're looking for full flexion and pushing my palms as far away from my heels. And we're talking about distance. This is actually better than that. So we want to create that position of anchoring my toes in, fixing that pelvis, and then we want to pull our torso as far away from that as possible. And if I don't have adequate shoulder flexion or hip flexion, we just need to go here. All right, so option 1, set up here. Option 2, hold here. And again, we're going to hold this for 10 deep breaths in or 60 seconds. And we'll slowly pull ourselves out of that. Last one, T6, T7. So we're going to set up our legs wide. We're going to pull our toes in because our legs are long, and then we're going to rotate them down. Remember, every time my legs are extended, I take this dorsiflexed and internal rotated position of the leg, and then I go into my stretch from there. From here, now I'm trying to pull out on these facets or these transverse processes in an oblique direction. So instead of going straight up, we're going to make a Y. And we're going to hold this stretch position for, again, 10 deep breaths or 60 seconds. Awesome, thank you guys. We'll finish up with some breathing. Have a great one. So we're gonna go into breathing now. We're looking for breathing as this normal sequence thing we're trying to do depending on our position. So the first order is going through how we wanna breathe. Breathe in through your nose, out through your mouth is the appropriate timing and rhythm of this. And what we're doing on that is to creating a really good diaphragmatic contraction, as well as teaching inhale and exhale kind of a focus there. And what we're going to do is change our position. And really we're just going to define, like, for you, find the position where, depending on how hard you just trained or what our ultimate goal is, to get the best respiration mechanics possible. And we have 3 different positions we can really leverage here. You know, the first position is going to be a crocodile position. So I'm lying on the ground. I have my hands underneath my forehead, and then I'm just going to breathe in that position. And that is a great position for general relaxation. We have a lot of surface area on the ground, so we can get a really good, relaxing breath work done. Now, what's interesting behind that, though, is I'm actually pushing against the ground with my stomach. So now when I inhale, I have to create more pressure so I spread myself out over that ground. So if I'm struggling to take air in, a crocodile position might be a really good strategy for you to use. The second position is a 90-90. So you can find a wall, you can find a bench, you can find something like a couch or at home, where I'm putting my feet up on that fixed position. So imaginary chair underneath my feet here. And what that is it's going to be a little easier to take air in because I don't have anything blocking it, but you're going to find as I breathe in, maybe that low back comes off the ground. So I need to be a little bit more efficient at creating stability without that external feedback, but we need to be really good at pushing that air out. And you can further accentuate that up by elevating and pushing through your heels and creating what they call a hemi-bridge. And that's going to take that pelvis and put it in a different position. And that's going to create a whole different emphasis. If you're normally a person that inhales and arches their back, it might feel really, really challenging. You might feel a cramping sensation. And now this is taking respiration and breathing into a little bit more of a training exercise. So depending on where we're at, if we're really struggling with inhalation, get on the ground, go crocodile breathing. If you really want to work on more mechanics of breathing and work on more exhalation, get into a 90-90. And then the final position is an inverted position. So you can go up on, stacked up on some books, or you can just simply take our body at a negative angle, meaning that my hips are higher than my torso. You just simply go in a kneeling and elbow position. And the goal being is the more inverted I am, the more requirement I'm going to have for exhalation. And it's going to be harder to take breath in, so you actually feel a premature block in there, because when we breathe, that diaphragm actually contracts, and we're going now against gravity. Right? So normally that diaphragm can just drop and descend. It still contracts, but it has the assistance of gravity. Now we're actually going against gravity, and we have to push up and away in that. The more inverted I am, the more impact it has on that, and you'll feel a premature block on that. And what we really need to do on that is taking it away from that inhalation and more towards the exhalation. And now we have to really work to push that air out to really create that pressure that we need. And as we go through the spectrum of this, I just train my tail off. I'm really tired. I really want to get some good parasympathetic kind of breathing and relax, go into a crocodile position. If I'm feeling okay, and I still want to work in some good strategies, whether inhale or exhale, but I want to get a little bit more impact from that, go into a 90-90 position. And then I really want to work an exhalation strategy. Get into that inverted position, elevate yourself on some actually pillows or some books, or if you have some balance pads at home, to get a little bit more of that negative pressure so I can push against the impact of gravity with that diaphragm. Find whatever strategy works best for you. Still going to keep that same rhythm of breathing in throughout the nose. We can accentuate that diaphragmatic contraction by pushing our tongue to the roof of the mouth. We can accentuate it a little bit further by getting a cadence to it. We can hit a 4-4-8 tempo, meaning 4 seconds in, 4-second hold, 8 seconds out, and then we can actually utilize the final 4, holding that breath out for 4. And what this does is really tries to control and give some deliberate emphasis towards that specific area that we really typically need to work. And that focus on breathing out with a forceful contraction to activate that diaphragm in any position is always a great strategy. If you just want to relax in breathing and do an inventory from head to toe, also great. But make sure that we're getting this breathing component in, especially in these periods that we feel like we're having a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety, a lot of stuff that we just simply have no control over. Get grasp of how you can control that 1 to 2 minutes at any given day, that whenever you want, through your breathing.